Gorilla Island by Grandpa. Well, the Shoemaker grandkids were huddled close to the campfire. Grandpa, tell us a story. A story about wild animals, Caleb said. A story about a train, James said. A story about kids like us, Nora said. Kids who have an adventure, Lily said. Claire smiled. How about a scary story? Well, Grandpa said, I know exactly the type of story to tell you, but I must warn you, it is a little scary. Are you sure you want that? Nora and Lily and James and Caleb and Claire and Miles and Daniel looked at each other and huddled and nodded. We won't be scared, they all said together. Grandpa looked at each of them. If I tell this story, I'm absolutely sure that somebody sitting around this campfire will get really, really scared. And it might be you. The grandkids giggled. Tell us anyway. We are brave. Okay. We will see how brave you are, Grandpa shrugged. The story's about a train, and it is quite an adventure. Caleb waved his hand. What about wild animals? Oh, there are animals in this story, Grandpa whispered, and they were very wild. Claire did not look one bit scared. What's the name of the story, Grandpa? Grandpa looked at the grandkids as if to see if they could really handle this scary story. The title is Gorilla Island. Lily sucked in her breath and looked at Nora. Gorillas? Grandpa smiled. Sounds a bit too scary, right? I could tell you a nice little train story about the little engine that could. Should we do that instead? No, Lily and Nora said together, we want to hear the story of Gorilla Island. Okay, Grandpa shrugged. If you want me to stop at any point, just put your hands over your ears and say, please stop, okay? James nodded. Caleb nodded. Claire nodded. Miles nodded. Nora nodded. Daniel nodded. And finally, Lily nodded too. Grandpa threw another log on the campfire. Our story starts a long, long time ago, before there were cars, back when people around here rode horses or maybe trains. And the story starts at the far side of our state, the part that runs along the Mississippi River. Well, long ago, there was a circus train that traveled by train on tracks that ran alongside the Mississippi River. That train stopped at small towns to set up its giant tent. The circus had more animals than any circus ever had before, and people would travel for miles just to see them and the amazing things they'd been trained to do. The circuit had its very own train. The name of the circus was painted on every train car in large, fancy red letters. Master Magnifico's Menagerie of Magnanimous Marvels. The engine was the old type, powered by steam. Then there were train cars for the circus workers and animal trainers. Finally, there were cars and cars with bars on the windows and cages inside for the wild, wild animals. Lily raised her hands. Lions? Nora and Caleb joined in. Elephants? Claire stood up. She was so excited. Zebras? Yes, Grandpa said, all of those. Oh, Nora said, what about hippopotamus unicorns? Not on this train, Grandpa said. That's a different story. But Master Magnifico's Menagerie of Magnanimous Marvels had giraffes and tigers and strange animals nobody has ever seen before in a zoo. And then, in the last train car, just before the caboose, there was one car that had extra heavy bars on the windows and doors. And inside that train car were the scariest and most dangerous of all the animals in the circus. Do you know what was there? Miles raised one finger. Skunks? Grandpa smiled. Not skunks, but their fur was just as black as a skunk. Bears! Nora and Lily guessed the same thing at the same time. A very good guess, Grandpa said, but the animals inside was even stronger than a bear. Sharks! Caleb said. Alligators! James said. Claire's eyes got really wide. They were whales. Whales don't ride trains, Lily said. Well, these are all very good guesses, Grandpa said, but in the last train car were the gorillas. Gorillas, James said. Scary. That's right, Grandpa said. Well, the circus train was heading to a town along the Mississippi River. Even though it was dark, that steam train kept going. Master Magnifico wanted to get to a town so he could set up the big tent before morning. Then a terrible storm blew in. The lightning and the thunder were making all the animals inside the train get very, very scared. And then it happened. A bolt of lightning struck a giant oak tree next to the tracks with a mighty thwack. The tree split in half. The tree shook for a moment, then fell right across the tracks in front of the train. Well, the engineer pulled the brakes, but the train couldn't stop in time. The engine slammed into a tree so hard that the train cars jumped the track and tipped over. The doors swung open and the animals escaped. Thankfully, not one person or animal on the train was hurt, but the workers had a terrible time tracking down the animals and getting them back into their cages. They found the elephant at a nearby town at an ice cream stand. The giraffe was hiding behind a telephone pole. The lion was in the park, standing very still, pretending it was a statue. When they finally had the train on the tracks and the tree cleared away and all the animals inside, Master Magnifico realized that nobody had found the gorillas. And they never did. Even though they searched and they searched. They checked in every town along the river for miles in both directions. Nobody had seen the gorillas. Finally, they stopped searching. They figured the gorillas must have jumped into the Mississippi River by mistake and were gone forever. Gorillas don't know how to swim, and there were no life jackets on the train for them. But over the years that followed, there were reports that people saw gorillas on an island in the Mississippi River. One man claimed he got hit in the head with a flying banana peel. And nobody believed the stories because whenever anyone went to the island to check, they didn't see a single gorilla anywhere. But gorillas know how to hide, too. Eventually, the island became known as Gorilla Island, and people stayed away just in case the gorillas were really there. Well, just a few weeks ago, a man from the Lincoln Park Zoo went to the island to see if the old stories were true. Since he was from the zoo, he knew exactly where to look on the island because he knew where gorillas liked to hide. And he found lots and lots of gorillas. They'd had families, and there was hardly any room for them on the island anymore, and there wasn't much food. "I will come back," the zookeeper said. "I will make homes for each of you at Lincoln Park Zoo, and you will have plenty to eat." The man left quickly, promising to return soon. Well, the gorillas got a little scared. Would the Lincoln Park Zoo be a good place to live? Would they find bananas there? The gorillas decided they would have to check the zoo out for themselves. So the gorillas swam back across the Mississippi River that very night. All the way. And it was a long way to Lincoln Park Zoo. And the gorillas wanted to get started. When the man came to bring the gorillas to the zoo a few days later, the gorillas were gone. He couldn't find them, even though he knew where they liked to hide. That's when he realized they had left the island. He has been searching for them ever since. "You mean," Claire said, "that the gorillas still haven't been caught?" Grandpa shook his head. "Not one of them. They could be anywhere," Lily said. "They could be close," Nora said. "Well, that's true," Grandpa stood up. "Maybe I better stop telling the story. Remember, I said that if I told the story of Gorilla Island, somebody around this campfire was going to get really, really scared." "We're not scared," Caleb said. "We want to hear the rest of the story, Grandpa." Grandpa paused. "You sure?" Caleb and Lily and Claire and Nora and James and Miles and Daniel nodded. "Okay." Grandpa said, "Well, there were news reports over the last few weeks that some gorillas were spotted at night heading for Chicago. But since gorillas only travel at night and they are very good at hiding, The police haven't found them. We live in Chicago, Claire said. What if they come here? Wait. Grandpa held up his hands. I hear something beside the house. Do you think it's a... Claire raised both hands like a gorilla. Grandpa will find out. All of you, stay by the campfire. Stay close together. I'll be right back. Caleb and Lily and Nora and James and Claire and Miles and Daniel all huddled close together. They watched Grandpa sneak up to the house and disappear around the corner. James looked scared. Do you think there's a gorilla here? Will it get Grandpa? Miles looked scared too. Caleb and Lily and Nora looked at each other and shook their heads. I think Grandpa's trying to trick us. Suddenly they heard, ooh, ooh, coming from the other side of the house. And from around the corner of the house ran a gorilla. James and Miles shouted at the very same time. The gorilla jumped and waved its arms around. Ooh, ooh, The gorilla is wearing Grandpa's shirt, Caleb whispered. And Grandpa's pants, Lily whispered. And Grandpa's shoes, Nora whispered. Claire smiled. Do you know what that means? Yes! James and Miles hugged each other tight. The gorilla ate Grandpa! Caleb and Lily and Nora and even Daniel laughed very hard. No, Grandpa is wearing a gorilla mask, Caleb said. He is trying to trick us. I think we should trick him. Let's get the gorilla, Nora said. All 7 of them chased Grandpa, who was pretending to be a gorilla, but he wasn't doing a very good job of it. Grandpa ran away from all the grandkids, but because he was wearing a gorilla mask, he couldn't see very good. He ran into the garage and rolled onto the grass. Caleb pulled the mask off Grandpa's head and tossed it on the sidewalk behind Grandpa. Grandpa smiled. I scared you all good, didn't I? We were not scared, Lily and Nora and Claire said. Not one bit. Miles picked up the gorilla mask and put it on his head. Caleb smiled and motioned for him to sneak up behind Grandpa. Come on, Grandpa said, not noticing Miles tiptoeing up behind him. I said somebody was going to be really scared. I worked really hard to trick all of you. One of you had to believe the gorilla was real, right? Caleb tried to make his face look really scared. James watched what Caleb did and made the same scared face. Grandpa, look! Caleb pointed behind him. Claire did her very best pretend scream. A gorilla! For real this time! Grandpa stood and whirled around. Nora and Lily hugged each other and pretended to be absolutely terrified. He looks hungry! Ooh, Miles said, his voice echoing from inside the mask. He raised his hands over his head and wiggled his fingers. Ooh, A baby gorilla! Grandpa spread out his hands to protect the grandkids. Stay behind me, everyone. He does look hungry. Run for the house, kids, Grandpa said. I'll hold him off as long as I can. Somebody call 911. But the kids didn't run. Fear has made you freeze, Grandpa said. We must get you into the house and lock the door. I thought I made up the gorilla train story, but it must be true. Grandpa actually looked kind of scared. Suddenly his eyes got even wider. Where is Miles? Right here, Miles said. He lifted up the corner of his mask. What? Grandpa looked confused. You tricked me? Caleb, James, Lily, Nora, Claire, and Daniel could not pretend any longer. They laughed and laughed and laughed. You were right, Grandpa, Lily said. Somebody around this campfire definitely did get really, really scared tonight. Caleb and Nora and Claire and Daniel pointed at Grandpa. And that somebody is you. The end.